Hi, everybody. Welcome to season two of the Way Between podcast. I'm Adam Dietz here with my guest host, Nick Egan. Hi, Nick.
Hey Adam, good to be here.
Great to have you here, Nick. Today we'll be talking about Buddhism kind of evolving into Zen Buddhism over the centuries, basically, or the generations, we should say. But I did want to kind of just reset since it's the beginning of season two and just mention, what's going on with this project. Basically, I started on a manuscript that tied together all my work from teaching a philosophy 101 course. So in season one, we went over Western philosophy through the Socratics. We went over Confucian philosophy, Taoist philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. And these are the kind of things I would introduce in a 101 course. So after that 101 course ended, I decided to put all the stories that we had from the different philosophical backgrounds into a manuscript. And out of that manuscript now, I wanted to get this podcast started just to have a long format and introduce people to the valuable teachings of different philosophies. Nick, on that note, could you say anything about how studying philosophy and religion has impacted your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's given me frameworks, I'd say more on the philosophical side, to understand complex issues and a lot of ambiguity in a way that I think adds more clarity both to my personal life and my professional life.
Yeah, that's what's well said, and I understand that same feeling. For me, I wasn't. I don't think most people, unless they grow up in kind of a special household, don't live very mindfully, and you kind of start off just having a lot of different ideas and values kind of projected upon you. And for me, philosophy helped me kind of sift through those and see, like you said, use the word clarity, have more inner space to kind of see what comes and goes, and just live a little more mindfully, a little more clear, and have a sense of what's really important in life. I think is another aspect of it. I think before I started studying philosophy, I was a lot of as you hear sometimes in beginning philosophy courses, I was probably not living my own values. I was living values that people had kind of told me I should be living, right?
Yeah, which is I mean, oftentimes that's a useful shorthand if you can rely on tradition in that way. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it's important to examine. I think any belief that we hold creates like these patterns of behavior that then can create outcomes within our life. So it's important to examine those beliefs in order to disrupt things if we don't want to go towards certain outcomes.
Yeah, then you're living more consciously. You could choose, right? If you're not
Exactly.
living consciously, you can't choose. I actually just wrote a piece on this. I have a Substack, The Way Between on Substack, and I wrote a piece on this. Sometimes I write for different periodicals and whatnot, but for this, I just wanted to go straight to the Substack because it felt really meaningful to me, and I didn't want to have it just linger waiting for different editors and publishers to decide if they wanted to pick it up or not. And the point is, it was about there's an old saying in Zen, and today we'll be looking at Zen, but the old saying in Zen was that when I first started studying Zen, a mountain was a mountain. Then when I studied Zen a little longer, the mountain was no longer a mountain. And when I kept studying Zen more, the mountain was a mountain again. I'm paraphrasing, but I wrote the piece on Substack to say that before I started studying philosophy, my life and my daily life was my daily life. Then when I started studying philosophy, I my mind opened up. I examined everything. And so everything was like deconstructed. My life was no longer my life, so in some ways, right? And now I'm coming full circle back in a lot of ways to really, okay, my upbringing, my desires from my childhood, those all are part of my personality. I can't just like throw them all away. So my life is my life again. But in both instances, the mountain and the life, it's that you see it kind of at a higher level. You have more inner space to see and choose and be more proactive, more creative, and less kind of unconscious.
Yeah.
Do you have
No,
any do you have any similar experience?
I think that's well said. Yeah, it's funny. I was just actually commenting to a friend of mine. The people that I know, at least in the Buddhist tradition, specifically like the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but I think more broadly too, that are Westerners that have taken these paths really seriously and really do the internal cultivation to get to whatever, some kind of experience. They tend to be more, I guess, ordinary is the word that I'm looking for. Ordinary than what people would assume or what they want to think about it. And like a lot of people have ideas about projecting onto people that are practicing these passives, them being like holy or saintly or whatever. And they're just very chill, kind of down to earth people, at least in my experience, the ones that I'm encountering that have been doing this, 20, 30, 40, 50 years even. And I think that really shines through in terms of somebody that's really authentically like carrying a path forward, as opposed to like some of these charismatic people that you might see on TV on either side, even within, if you go to Asia, you can see like charismatic type of Buddhist stuff even. That is not so, that's not necessarily my experience of people that have really done the work, so to
Yeah,
speak.
and I think that that shines through in a lot of teachings. A lot of teachings teach about
Yeah.
humility and simplicity.
Mhm.
Lao Tzu himself says you shouldn't really show off, basically. You should cover your ability a little bit. So, or if you're showing off too much, it's easy to get basically cut down, right? Or someone will come after you. If you, I told a story in class, speaking of how this project comes out of my Philosophy 101 class. I tell the story in class where when things were a lot more wild when we were growing up, in some ways. And when we were in like third grade, we played this game at the playground. There was a little hill near our playground, and we would play King of the Mountain.
Yeah.
And so King of the Mountain was whoever's on top, you're King of the Mountain. But then, as soon as you're King of the Mountain, someone comes up and just bashes you over, and then they're King of the Mountain, right?
Yeah,
So if
totally.
you show off and you're like, I'm number one, I'm so great, is the story I tell the students when I used to teach this in class, and then you can get knocked down really easy. Whereas if you just stood like maybe 2 feet away and you were second place or third place, you could just live peacefully.
You're Prince of the Mountain in that case.
Yeah, you're not king of the mountain, but you're having a much easier time than getting bashed over all the time.
Yeah, that's possible for
Yeah.
sure.
So, like I said before, on this season two, we wanted to go back now and kind of do part two of all the different philosophies. So, we'll look this season at, for Socrates, we'll look at Plato. For Confucius, we'll look at Mencius. For Lao Tzu, we'll look at Chuang-Tzu. And in this case, since we ended on Buddhism last time and looked at the life of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, I'd like to look and see how Buddhism evolved in the Zen lineage after him toward Huineng. So the story that I told in class, and I think is very profound, is that there's a piece called "The Record of the Transmission of the Lamp," very important in Zen lineage, and this is a record of enlightenment, like one candle, right? So Buddha has the mind of enlightenment, and he is like one candle, and he can pass the mind of enlightenment on to the next student. And now there are two candles lit, so one enlightened mind and the next enlightened mind, and this lineage progresses. And so that story is called the record of the transmission of the lamp. Traces the lineage of Zen masters down to, I believe, we'll look at Huineng, which is a 33rd generation lineage from Lord Gautama Buddha down to all the way 32, 33 steps further toward Huineng. So when I'm going over this in class, I often mention that I always mention the first story is where Lord Buddha, after he's been enlightened and he's been teaching for some time, everyone knows he's going to present another teaching, and people have gathered around from all over. And Nick, in some of the traditions, the way these gatherings are really intense, like the gods have gathered and all
Yeah.
these past people have gathered. So it's a big deal. Everyone's gathering. I think the Zen tradition keeps it more simple. It just says typically it's more simple, I think. But regardless, a big, huge crowd has gathered. So Lord Buddha begins his teaching. He goes and he walks towards the stage, and everyone's watching, rapt to hear this enlightened one give a teaching. And when he arrives at the steps of the stage, he stops and he looks down and he reaches down and he picks something up. And then he ascends the stage. And at this time, everyone is just really locked in. They want to hear his teaching. And all he does is he holds up a flower. It's what he picked down from his steps. He holds up a flower. Doesn't say any words. And in this moment, he looks out into the audience and sees Kassapa, Maha Kassapa, soon to be. Okay? And he sees that Kassapa, his face is shining. His face, he has complete understanding that when Buddha held up this flower, then Kassapa actually, in that moment, got true, complete, sudden enlightenment. This is the first record of the transmission of the lamp. So the message that Kassapa received at that time was that there's always a lotus at your foot. There's always something in your path that's worthy of your attention, that's beautiful, that's powerful, it's just for you. And so when he holds up the flower, doesn't say any words, Kassapa received enlightenment. And then Lord Buddha just simply descended the stage. No more teaching, all done. His work here is done. Sudden enlightenment for Kassapa. Nick, have you heard this story before?
Yeah, I have. It's a beautiful story. It's this idea of, and your interpretation is interesting as well. It's like the idea that you can transmit, or one can transmit a feeling or the state of enlightenment. So it gets a little dicey when we're talking about this kind of thing. So like if I say the state of enlightenment, like what does that
Mm,
even mean? There's obviously like no state,
too
because if there's a
static.
state, then there's two things. There's something that's in the state, and we don't want to go to like a dualistic perspective. So
Good.
words get a little bit slippery here. So anybody that's really dived into this in a way that's very philosophical, they're going to say like, oh, it's not a state and all of that, and that's true. But for just the conversational purposes, it's this concept that you can transmit this realization from one person that has it to another person, and that still even carries forward to this day in lots of different kinds of Buddhism, but definitely it's emphasized very strongly in Zen.
Right. One of the biggest characteristics, maybe the main characteristic of Zen Buddhism is sudden enlightenment. I once had a student ask me, "Are you enlightened?" And I was just scared. Right? I don't want to. And so I said, "No," right away, no.
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, one reason why I'm saying no is because as soon as you say you're enlightened, you're putting it into a state of enlightenment.
Mhm.
You're blocking yourself off from the next moment of being enlightened again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a interesting. It reminds me of those like little finger traps where you put one in, like the more you pull on it and the tighter it gets, that kind of
Uh,
thing. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm certainly that makes two of us. I'm nowhere near enlightened as like a destination. But see, even that kind of languaging is talking about like a place that you go, right? I'm nowhere near enlightened, like as if enlightenment is something that you can actually approach.
well,
Which is not that's not really the teachings of Zen at all. The teachings of Zen, at least in the sudden enlightenment school, came to be, you are naturally like your original face is the essence of enlightenment, and there's a revealing of that. And then that's when all the things kind of fall apart. That's why it's so funny. Like in Zen too, they have this really, and I'll tell a quick story about this. They have a pattern of if somebody asks a very profound question,
yeah.
they'll answer with something very simple and very relative. If somebody asks a very relative question, they'll ask or their answer was something profound. So it'd be like, what is the nature of enlightenment? And then they'll say like this teacup or something like that. And so there's a funny story. Kalu Rinpoche, a very famous Tibetan teacher, passed away, 30 years ago. He was in the West teaching, and then a big Zen teacher came, and they were talking to each other. And when they first met each other, the Zen teacher held up an orange, and he said, "What is this?" And then Kalu Rinpoche just like looked at him, and he said, "What is this?" And then Kalu Rinpoche looked at his translator. He said, "Does he not know what an orange is?" Because he was asking for like a Dharma sort of question, but that's a very Zen specific kind of way to talk about things.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing that up because we're going to see the origins of that. We're going to see the origins of the first, basically called the first patriarch of Zen Buddhism, Huineng, who he's the one who shows us an amazing story of sudden enlightenment,
Mhm.
his own personal story. But he also established if someone asks something very high, you answer very low. If someone asks you
Mhm.
very low, you answer very high. And another thing that Huineng and also original face, original mind from Huineng too. So the lineage goes from Kassapa and it keeps going and going and going. And then I want to say I always forget the numbers and get them mixed up, but maybe around 28 in India, passing on enlightenment to the next, to the next, to the next. Around 28, I think, is Bodhidharma goes to China. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers,
Sure,
but
sure. So
yeah.
so one after many generations, one philosopher, one Zen master, one patriarch, we call it patriarch, the highest Zen, and they pass down a robe, a symbol of enlightenment is a robe and a bowl.
Mhm.
And the three things, they give you a dharma, the actual truth, they help solidify your enlightenment, then they pass a symbol, a robe, and a bowl. So it passed down all the way, I believe, 28 generations to Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma took this teaching to China.
Hmm.
So Bodhidharma is considered the first patriarch of Chinese Buddhism. Then a few generations later, we hear the story of Huineng. Mm. So earlier we were talking about enlightenment. And while Nick and I both say we haven't gotten very far and we this kind of thing, actually Zen Buddhism can say everyone can be enlightened in one moment.
Yeah.
Sudden enlightenment. And Huineng is the first story like this. Huineng is his father was ostracized. His father was kicked out of society and made to go live in Guangdong, in Canton. At this time, it's like in Asia, you all still get this feeling to this day. You want to be metropolitan. You want to be where the hustle and bustle is. You want to be linked into everything. You want to be at the cutting edge of fashion and style. The closer to the capital you are, the more you want to be high up. In a lot of ways, you want to be elegant. You want to know what's going on. You don't want to be like left out in the boonies. So getting ostracized, the words, what's the word I'm looking for? Not ostracized, kicked out,
Like
whatever.
exiled. Yeah.
Yeah, so he got ostracized all the way to Canton, and so this is very bad. It's almost like a death sentence. And all the culture, everyone who is closer to academia as well, these people are at this time Buddhism is very fashionable. Every intelligent person, so many people want to go to the monastery, get enlightenment. It's very fashionable. So anyway, all people in society look down at someone from this area of China and say, "You're a barbarian.
Mhm.
You're not in the culture. You're rustic. You don't have good manners. You don't know what's in fashion. You don't know what's the best and the brightest, right? You're not part of the intelligentsia." So this is a very difficult challenge for Huineng and his family. Not only that, but then his father dies. So they're very, very poor. The poorest you can be. Huineng just tries to support his mother by going out into the forest and gathering sticks to come sell them back in town as firewood. It's like the equivalent of nowadays if someone comes to wash your window at a stoplight or something. It's like the lowest job you could get, right? Just hopefully someone will be generous and give you some money. So if not only that, but because his father died so young, because in his he's also illiterate, right? So the story of his spiritual transformation, so to speak, or the story of his path of enlightenment begins that he's just finishing up one of his deliveries of firewood and he exits the business and he hears someone saying some strange words. Okay? When he hears these strange words, he actually has sudden enlightenment. So you're looking at someone the lowest of all low. Prince Siddhartha was the highest of all high, right? And here Huineng is the lowest of all low. He heard what he heard. He approaches this person and says, "What? Who are you? What are you saying?" And this person says, "I am a monk from the monastery. I believe it's in Hunan province. I forget. I'm a monk from so and so monastery. The abbot told us to go forth and recite this, and we'll achieve some merit. And what I'm reciting is called the Diamond Sutra." And so Huineng hears these words from the Diamond Sutra and receives sudden enlightenment. So, as far as the story goes, at that time, because of this experience, the monk and some sponsor and his mother all agree that he should go travel to that monastery. But as far as what he heard and what the Diamond Sutra is, the Diamond Sutra, Nick, can you tell us a little bit about the Diamond Sutra? Because I know you're very well versed in different sutras and old texts.
Yeah, the Diamond Sutra, so it's interesting. The Diamond Sutra, the reason why it's such a popular sutra in East Asia now, and also Tibet, is because it actually says in the sutra, like somebody that chants even 4 lines of the sutra will create more merit than in existence in all the like 3,000-fold worlds, essentially, right? So it's like but the reason for that is because it's a very short sutra. I have a copy somewhere. Each stanza sets up understanding of the ultimate nature of things. And it's doing it through like a via negativa type of prajnaparamita. So prajnaparamita means the perfection of wisdom, and via negativa from a philosophy perspective is kind of deconstructing things in a certain way. So it'll be like, hey, is has somebody that has seen the Buddha actually seen the Buddha? No, that person has never seen the Buddha. If you've seen the Buddha, that kind of thing. So it sets up these pairs. And what it's trying to do, it's like deconstructing what we normally think of as our thoughts, and it's the surface level mind, so to speak. And in modern times, even in ancient times, that's what most people thought of as their mind, right? It's like what I used to think about. Thoughts and my mind arise at the same time, but there's like a deeper level, if we can use that kind of language
Yeah,
below.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Then that's what it's pointing at.
Right. And what I remember is that it's called the Diamond Sutra because like the Diamond Cutter Sutra, that it's diamond is the hardest thing in this world. Diamond cutter is so hard it could even cut off all ego. So now you have no
Yeah.
ego.
Yeah, well, so Vajrachatika, it's like a splinter of diamond, right? A
Uh,
splinter of Vajra. So
uh,
you probably
uh,
know the word
uh.
Vajra, which can mean, it does mean diamond. So it's like a very, it's the sharpest of the hardest thing that you can possibly have. So it like cuts through.
Yeah. Cut
Yeah.
even can cut through
Yeah.
ego. So once you leave your ego, then you can have sudden enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Although if you leave, it's see, it's a little bit tricky though, because if you leave your ego, then all of a sudden, who is the one that's leaving the ego?
So the language is tricky. You're correct.
Yeah.
The language in Chinese tradition is most often I forgot myself.
Hmm.
I forgot
Yeah.
myself. So once you forget this ego, forget this self, then what happens is you see your original face, you see your true self come out.
Hmm.
So
That's beautiful. I like
maybe,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe you have a new ego, original face self. Your new ego can come out.
Don't put ego on the ego list.
Yeah, don't cause confusion. Don't cause
Yeah,
I'm causing confusion.
not at
Uh
all.
yeah. So what 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 happens next is that Huineng does go to visit that monastery. I'm just trying to think if I had another thought that I wanted to touch on while you were speaking before we move on. Oh yes, that's what it was. One thing that comes up in the Diamond Sutra at the very end is that the Buddha says, "Thus shall ye see all this world," Subhuti is one of his disciples, "as a fleeting dream, like a
Mhm.
bubble in a stream."
Yeah.
So, and there may be some more language there as well, but the image is very powerful. This entire world is so tiny.
Hmm.
Because actually your original mind is so vast. It's basically a piece of the universe. The entire cosmos is your original mind. So this entire world is a small dream, just like a bubble that comes up in a stream and goes away. So then when if you look at the world and you feel that world is like that, then you have so much inside space. Your mind can feel so vast. I think when you have this enlightenment, you look at the world and it's so tiny. Your self is so vast. Does that sound
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah, no, it definitely is familiar. It also is, it's emphasizing the flux of the world. So like
Mm.
emphasizing the change and the transient nature of the world. So it's like, well, the world is, let's imagine the swirling bubbles. Let's imagine, you're seeing a stream and there's a little waterfall coming. There's a swirl of bubbles happening. It's just constantly fluxing and changing. But what happens is we get caught up in clinging to the bubble because we have a narrow view. And so because of that narrow view, then the bubble arises, it stays for a little while, and then it dissolves. But we get caught up in like that arc of things.
Yeah.
When in reality, the entire time, the bubble was just a transient flux state anyway.
Uh,
And so what the original mind is talking about is there is a way to be aware and be in existence without clinging to the arising of transient phenomena. And
oh.
that,
So in Chinese philosophy is like Tao. So
yeah.
this Tao, if Nick used a stream analogy, this Tao is like you look at a stream, it's like you look at Tao. The stream has always existed. It looks like it has always existed. Tao has always existed,
Mm.
but actually it's always new. Every moment is new. Every moment is flowing and flowing and new and new and new and new and new, right? So it's always there, but also always new.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, so I mean, we could get even deeper into that. That's exactly right. So it's like even if you see if there's a moment of awareness, let's take just a rock or a stream or whatever, and even just a rock, it seems to not change, but the rock is co-arising with our awareness of it, right? And so
Uh,
that relationship is actually new on a momentary basis. So every
Uh,
second is actually new. And so we're clinging to this concept of rock. But in reality, the nature of mind or our original face, it transcends both of those things. So it's neither rock nor self, nor the movement of the rock.
well, and that the way I learned it was also is Tao is in everything. So the rock has Tao in it. The and also I love in class I always love relating this back to science. Like Carl Sagan or Neil deGrasse Tyson. I always get his last names mixed up, the order.
Yeah.
But he said, Neil Tyson, he said that the most interesting thing he learned in all of science is that we are all stardust.
Hmm.
So we have all come from the Big Bang. Everything in this universe can trace its molecules, and I would say also probably energy, back.
Hmm.
So being and non-being can trace back to the Big Bang. So I have being and non-being. The rock has being and non-being. This is original Tao from the Big Bang that we both have. So when I experience that, then I can be brothers with the rock. Right? Right?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like to put that another way, the substrate of all phenomenal existence is the same.
Mm.
Meaning that so one way that I visualize that is just imagine that you're in a room with lots of different things. Like my room has books, it has myself, it has a desk, a computer, whatever, but all of it is made out of gold. Everything is made out of gold. And some parts of it, I'm like, well, I don't like this pen made of gold, but I do like this phone made of gold or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like if I remember, oh yeah, it's all actually gold. The substrate, meaning like the actuality of it, is all the same in
It's
that
like
way.
it's like when you see the
Yeah,
Matrix, green.
yeah, it is. The Matrix is actually quite a good analogy.
Yeah.
Actually, the only problem with the Matrix is it's like reality imposed. Actually, you could take the Matrix. So in the Matrix, right? It's like the AIs or whatever are like forcing us to be in this illusion, and they're projecting it onto us. But in Buddhist thought, and I think even Taoist thought too, it's like we are the source, both the source and the enjoyer of the Matrix,
Mm,
right? So the Matrix is projected out from our consciousness into everything else.
mm,
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that we just looked at the Diamond Sutra a little bit, and I'm glad we did because it led us into this interesting conversation as well. So when Huineng, let's just say Huineng sees the Matrix. No, I don't want to cheapen it or belittle it, or also muddy it. Also
Yeah.
muddy. It could get complicated. We could go down a rabbit hole. But he has sudden enlightenment. So then he goes on a months-long journey because a long time to travel back then. He goes a month-long journey to go to this monastery and introduce himself to the abbot. So he introduces himself to the abbot and says, Abbot, I have heard this Diamond Sutra and I had enlightenment. And the abbot is actually, when they're conversing back and forth, he says something that made the abbot, wow, he does have enlightenment. The abbot thinks, wow, he does have enlightenment. But if he shows off right now, all these students that have been studying for years or months or even decades for some to try and get enlightenment, that devote their entire life meditation in this monastery, they'll be so jealous that someone has just come out of nowhere with sudden enlightenment. So he says, you go out of this monastery, you just go to the farm area and just shuck the rice and do menial jobs for us, right? To actually his like thinking is to protect him. But he says, Huineng, you're this barbarian is too bright. He's like, you're a barbarian, right? You're too bright. Go to shuck rice. So Huineng actually goes and shucks rice for months. And the abbot doesn't even say anything to him. Huineng is just there. At this point, the abbot decides to have let's just say almost like a poetry contest, right? And the idea is that if someone, he tells everyone, all the students, all the pupils, if you can write a poem that shows you have enlightenment, I will give you the robe and the bull and the Dharma. Basically, you'll be the next patriarch. And so actually all the students think, I am not good enough. I don't know anything. I'm terrible. I know there's one top student. If anyone has a chance, it's him. He's the only one. Mm. So this student actually is very fearful to be embarrassed that he writes a stupid poem. So he writes anonymously on a wall in the main hall. I believe it's the main hall. They have a wall that's been painted over because they want to put a new mural on it. So it's a blank wall. So he goes on this wall and he writes a poem, something along the lines of our mind is like a mirror. Our body is like the Bodhi tree, something like this, right? And every day we have to just wipe the dust off the mirror, let no dust alight, right? So, do you know this poem?
I don't know it by heart, but I'm just looking at it real quick.
Oh, good. Yeah, I it's something along those lines. The main point is that he needs to dust off the mirror. It's like our mind is a mirror. We need to dust it every day. Let no
Yeah,
dust light onto it. Let no dust fall onto it. So
yeah.
this poem stands in the main hall. Did you get it?
I have Huineng's response to it.
Yes, okay, great, because
Yeah,
that is even more important. So
sounds good.
in a minute we'll have the exact version. Uh, but this poem stands on the hall, the main hall, and everyone looks at it. Wow, this is a very good poem. Very good. Surely this person has enlightenment. And the abbot comes and says, this poem shows that someone has just come to the brink of enlightenment, but they haven't passed through the door yet.
Nice. Yeah,
If
I have the poem.
Okay, great.
The original poem was the body is the Bodhi tree. The mind is like a bright mirror's stand. At all times we must strive to polish it and must not let dust collect.
Yes, yes. Okay. Uh, I have a different one in my head, but this is totally um, fine. Different translation. That's all right.
Yeah.
And so actually, the abbot says everyone should memorize this poem. It's good. If you memorize this and recite this, you'll actually achieve some merit and make yourself get closer to enlightenment. So now everyone's, pays honor to this poem, recites it. So one day a young boy is just walking by when Huineng is doing his job of shucking rice. And the boy is reciting this poem. And Huineng says, "Oh, wait a minute, what's that you're saying?" And so the boy explains the whole situation and tells him about this poem and that, oh, you barbarian, you don't even know this? You know, like, what are you doing? The abbot said everyone should recite this. You don't even know? And Huineng's like, so take pity on me. Just tell me it. Tell me what's going on. And so the boy tells him, and then Huineng's like, well, can you please go take me to this poem? So when they arrive, there's another gentleman there. I believe he's like a sheriff from the neighboring town, right? The town that's connected with the monastery, and he's come to pay his homage to the poem and to learn it and to recite it and to see it and memorize it. So Huineng says, "Please, sir, can you do me a big favor and write my poem, my response to it?" And the the person says, "What? You're barbarian? You're so arrogant. You think you can write a poem that's good enough?" And Huineng says, "Well, as far as truth goes, there's no difference between a high person and a low person. The highest person could be an idiot, or the lowest person could be very talented. So please take pity on me and just write this." And the guy's, "Oh, okay, you do seem pretty smart. After all, I will write it for you, you know." So let me take a stab at it and see how I do.
Yeah.
Um, Huineng responds, says, there is no Bodhi tree, nor mirror bright. Something about maybe since all is nothing, where can dust alight?
Good. Yeah, that's it. The in Yuan Dynasty text says Bodhi originally has no tree. The bright mirror also has no stand. Fundamentally, there's not a single thing where could dust arise.
Yeah. So now everyone gathers, like, holy smokes, look at this poem, it's so amazing. And so
As they do.
the abbot comes and how does how did they figure it out? I'm trying to remember how they figure out that it was Huineng. I think they all gather and they see that he wrote it and they think it's really good. And maybe they see him or the boy tells him or the sheriff guy tells him who wrote it. So now they're like, what? How can this barbarian, illiterate, how can he do this? What's going on? So it's causing a tumult, right? So the abbot comes and takes his shoe and wipes it off and says, there is no enlightenment in this poem. As you were, nothing to see here. But then what he does is he goes to Huineng in the middle of the night and asks him, is the rice ready? And so this is a very characteristic moment of Zen style. Right? Huineng knows this abbot is not coming to ask about the rice, a mundane thing. No way. So Huineng knows. And in my class, we took class called Blue Cliff Record with Dr. Wu. We studied the Blue Cliff Record. So this moment between master and pupil is that a little subtlety, Ji, is coming. So is the rice ready? Huineng catches this, very clever, and says, the rice was ready long ago, just waiting for the sieve, right? So then the abbot actually pounds his staff on the ground 3 times. Huineng knows he wants me to go at the third watch to his room. Right? So then Huineng goes at the third watch to his room and says, "You have achieved enlightenment, and I am going to give you the robe and the bowl and the Dharma." And so he teaches him, and he gives him instructions. He says, "You actually need to leave right now, because everyone's going to freak out when they find out who got this bowl and robe." So then Huineng runs away into the forest. He tells them where to go, across a river and this and that. And they chase him. They chase him. So one person chases him, and he's a very talented, old, almost like a military tracker type. So he gets close up to him. So in a moment, we'll tell this story, but I want to see, Nick, if you have any thoughts as we're going along with this story of Huineng so far.
No, it's such a good story. I mean, the poem stands out in that, the poem of, here, let me toggle back here. The poem of the body is the Bodhi tree, the mind is like the bright mirror stands, and you have to polish it. It's one of effort and it's one of going toward it. Like, don't let something happen, like effort, do things, do these things, like get toward enlightenment, kind of like how we were just talking about it earlier.
Right.
Whereas, Huineng's stanza was much more about there is no possibility for anything other than enlightenment.
Yeah.
And that is the view, right? That's the view from the other side of the shore
Uh,
that Huineng was experiencing. So just wanted to comment on that.
and this established Northern school and Southern school.
Hmm.
The Northern school ends up becoming more effort,
Hmm.
polish the mirror every day, effort, effort. This actually influenced stuff like Shaolin Monastery, where you every day make an effort, can become very strong because you practice every day, every day, every day. A certain part of you becomes very strong. And Southern school is that, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe like formless. And this is where you get something like drunken master, even, where you're any moment is a moment of potential enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
And you're just preparing yourself for that state without any fixed idea of effort or concept. I don't know how to describe it. It's so esoteric almost, right? And mystical. How do you even describe the difference? But I think that these poems describe the difference, right? That you're already enlightened. There's no
Hmm.
effort need to be made, right?
But yet you still need to meditate. Right?
Right,
Like
right.
that's the thing that people don't understand. They'll read that and be like, "Oh, well, I'm already enlightened." Well, yes, you are, but you also don't really realize it. It's like you may be in a dream but not know that you're in a dream, and just saying like I'm in a dream doesn't convince yourself that you actually are.
And I think we could call our mutual mentor. I don't know if you consider Dr. Wu a mentor or not.
Oh,
But
definitely, yeah.
yeah, Dr. Yi Wu from California Institute of Integral Studies, he gave like maybe 6 or 7 um, problems of Zen, right?
Mhm.
The weird versions of Zen. One is dead wood, where you
Mhm.
just you think that you're supposed to have no thought, so you just try to have no thought, like a dead wood. Another, what you're mentioning, is crazy Zen. Like
Yeah.
you think I'm enlightened, so you just act crazy. But even Hui Neng, who is enlightened, his story continues. Spoiler alert, he becomes ordained. He practices, he reads sutras, he meditates, he learns all the forms of Zen. So
Right.
to your point, right?
Yeah.
Um, so when this one pupil catches Huineng, and I think this is maybe, I don't know how we're doing on time, um, if we should keep going or not. I think we can keep going, but this student catches Huineng, and Huineng actually says, I'm just gonna put the robe and bowl on this rock and hide, you know? So he does. He's like, I'm not messing with this. He puts the robe and the bowl on the rock and says, basically you could have it, right? And so this student actually approaches the robe and bowl and says, I didn't come here for the robe and bowl. I came here for the third thing, the Dharma.
Mhm.
So Huineng says, okay, if you really did come here for the Dharma, then you should just sit quietly for a moment, relax, let your mind be still. After some time, right? After some time, then he asks him, when your mind is not thinking good and not thinking evil, which one are you? In that moment, you see your original face, right? So this student hears these words from Huineng and has sudden enlightenment.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, going beyond thought, they able to see what they originally are, an
Yeah.
original nature, original faith, original mind. So this goes back to what you were saying earlier with the original mind.
Yeah, and that's it. This is it's very interesting. So like it's very, very similar to I would say the view of Mahamudra and Dzogchen and the Tibetan side. And so it's like the space literally the space in between thoughts, which for most of us, we aren't aware that there is a space between thoughts. If we have a space between thoughts, it's like, oh, I'm just spacing out, and that's kind of like a or whatever. Like I'm not really thinking about something or whatever it is. But because this student had spent so much time meditating, he was able to understand that there is a space between thoughts. And in that instance, he became enlightened,
Yeah.
which is where it's a bit controversial, the whole sudden enlightenment thing. Because like, was his enlightenment sudden, or was it like the sum total of all of his past actions that led him to be able to understand that from Huineng? And the same thing with Huineng. Like what was it that allowed him to like grab onto the current of the space between thoughts? Um,
Yeah, even when Huineng first got enlightenment, like from the Diamond Sutra, the tradition will say, "Oh, he had good karma. He
yeah,
had."
exactly. Like yeah, there's I mean, the whole sudden versus gradual thing, it's like every instance of enlightenment is sudden if you look at it within its space of time. It's all like he was enlightened here or was not, and then now he is. But what led up to that moment, it's not inconsequential in terms of, everybody that's hearing this podcast can say like, hey, what's, in between the good thought and a bad thought? Where's your original face? Something like that. Maybe many people will become enlightened just from that, but probably not because we're not well trained, right?
Well, that's the thing. Even if you have, Dr. Wu also told a story of one of his friends that said, in my life, I had probably thousands, and you mentioned this before in a really interesting way on a different episode of our other podcast, um, that in my life, I probably had thousands of small enlightenments, and that actually I maybe had two or three great enlightenments. This friend of Dr. Wu's, and I think the point is, it's available for everyone.
Yeah.
Zen. This is the beautiful thing of Zen, though, that it doesn't take any BS. No nonsense. It doesn't let you get just in theory, we know it manifests differently, especially nowadays. But it's not supposed to let you get bogged down on anything. One Zen story is if you see the Buddha on the road, kill the Buddha. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound horrible, right? But actually, they mean that if you don't attach to anything, don't attach to even idea of Buddha, it can become a hindrance. All you need to see is your original face, your original mind, your original nature.
Yeah. That's the thing. Buddhism and I think any kind of spiritual, really, literally any kind of spiritual path, it becomes, and one of my teachers used to say this, and I'm a lot of people, myself included, they use it as sort of a framework to adorn their beliefs. It's like, oh, I like this belief system, so I just adopt this belief system. And now it's like, what do you have? Well, you've got a shiny new belief system.
Uh,
But it doesn't really cut to the heart of something, which the heart of it is within you. And you don't need a bunch of books. You don't need a bunch of all of these things to really understand what is the space between thoughts, right? But it could be helpful. It could be helpful up to a certain point, which is so it's again like a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, what's most important is your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
If you find something helpful, that's what Buddha said originally, I believe, something like if you find something that first of all, try it, practice
Hmm.
it, try it yourself. Don't take my word for it, try it.
Yeah.
And then if you find something helpful, use it. If it's not helpful, then let it go, right? Let it go.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the story of Huineng kind of comes to a culmination where the abbot told him that after a period of time, you should go to this other monastery. So Huineng actually, after he leaves, hit that one person that saw the original face, then he goes and lives for years in the woods with hunters, just hiding out. And the reason why is because again, this would cause such a tumult in the monastic society if some random person just suddenly, I'm enlightened, everyone follow me. So the abbot that gave Huineng the robe and bowl had insight that it needs to wait for the right time. So actually, Huineng lives in the woods with hunters, and he knows about some Buddhist precepts. So he actually only eats vegetables they're cooked in their same meat pan. He still only eats vegetables, and he tries to teach them according to their nature. The whole time he tries to teach these hunters according to their nature. And after some time, he realizes, okay, now the time is right, or ripe, or both, right, to go to the other monastery. And he goes to the other monastery, and when he arrives, two monks are out in front, and they're having a debate. They're having a debate. They say, "Look at that flag over there, right? Is the flag moving or is the wind moving?" And this is where we get Zen, enigmatic language, right? So he hears them, and they're arguing. One says it's the wind. One says it's the flag. And so Huineng arrives and says, "Actually, it's neither. It's your mind." So then it's like, whoa, and you what is going on? So the abbot arrives and here's this the abbot of that monastery arrives and says, "Oh, I heard long ago that the other abbot passed down his robe and bowl to a barbarian. Surely you must be that man." So then Huineng says, "Yes, it's true." And then that abbot ordains him, and he becomes truly the patriarch, the 33rd patriarch of Buddhism, the sixth patriarch of Chinese Buddhism. Hmm.
Yeah, sixth patriarch of Zen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
So,
it's such an amazing story.
so what do you think of that flag story too? These are like end up becoming be called koans, right? Public cases is a koan, a public case, a public record of these moments of enlightenment, and they're recorded for people to study and have this sense of these moments of enlightenment. So, what do you think of that story?
So I'm speaking only as an outsider. I've never done koan practice. My way of thinking about it is koans they're paradoxical, right? So they're like what is the sound of one hand clapping is probably the most famous one. And it's like, well, one hand can't make a sound, if you're thinking about it traditionally, and yet there's still a sound. And so it's like they're designed to short circuit the
Yeah,
thinking.
I was thinking the
Yeah, so
same
it's like
exact
a
thing.
moment of short circuiting in the same way that there are these examples in Zen literature of the master, or even in Tibetan tradition too, of, like the master hitting somebody with a shoe, or hitting them with a stick or something, or throwing a pebble and it strikes something, and it's like just a moment of almost like a mechanism. Then you can really, if you're trained and if you stabilize your mind in meditation, then you can grab hold of that feeling of what's between thoughts, because most people can't do it and it just passes by in ordinary time. So koans are really designed to stretch the mind as much as possible until it essentially breaks just for us. And
Yeah.
then in that moment, in that breaking, that's when the light of the sky comes through.
Or the light of your true self.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it comes
This,
out.
this, we probably should stop here. I just want to say, for our listeners and our viewers, I have one final thought. Maybe it will be our koan to think about together. When Huineng says is your mind that is moving, does he mean that actually everything is just in your mind, or does he mean that you have a kindred mind, that your true self is the same as the flag's true self? So that's something that I've thought about in the past with this koan. And anyway, I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. And Nick, do you have any final thoughts?
No, that was great. I really enjoyed the story of Huineng. I'm gonna go check out the Platform Sutra now.
Awesome. Yeah, Platform Sutra is also the Sutra of Huineng. There's a lot more in it. It's very, very interesting. And I want to thank you all for joining us on the Way Between podcast, and hopefully we will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.